We will begin this morning with Michelle introducing herself, and I would just really like to brag on Michelle. She's an awesome presenter and a very valued trainer for our targeted skill sessions and Common Core cadre. So at this point, I am turning it over to her.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Cohen. I teach at Putnam City High School right now. I've taught in the elementary school for about 8 or 9 years. I teach special ed. I moved to the high school about 5 years ago. I have kind of a wide range of experience being in special ed with big kids with lower levels of functioning. So today's presentation, I hope, will hit all areas of where you all teach. My certifications are kind of all over the board. I'm a National Board Certified Teacher. But the most important part of today is that you can take some of what we are doing today back to your classrooms and implement it pretty quickly and not stress too much about it, because it sounds overwhelming, but it's really pretty easy to implement in your classroom on a small scale until you get comfortable with it. Okay, so that's about me. Now tell us about you. Are they going to chat in, or are they going to?
Yes. Let's have you chat in to answer these questions. So what we want you to do is chat in to us. What's your name? What's your grade level? And your content area that you are currently teaching or serving in Oklahoma Public Schools. So go ahead and do that now. So I see here Kira teaches 6th, 7th, and 8th. Julie, 8th grade. Oh, we've got quite a number of middle school folks today. Crystal, 6th grade language arts. Oh, we have a student joining us today. Welcome, Kara Fagan from Northwest. Gifted and Talent Coordinator for Zero International, Nicolette, welcome. Here we have a high school contextual algebra teacher at Blackwell, Christopher Ayla, welcome. TPS Special Education, Priscilla, welcome. Tully, 1st grade, Kendall Whittier. Nancy Roberts, Technology Integration at Yarborough. Megan Wynn, Moore Public School, 8th grade, welcome. Bonnie says hi, Megan. Megan said hi. Glenda, 7th grade, Special Education. Janine Burns, Enid, Waller Middle School. Mike McElwee says hello. Enid is his hometown. So really, we have got folks all over the place today. We really like the webinar format because it's really nice to kind of be wherever you're at and still able to participate in some learning, and I hope all of you are comfy and warm this morning. So now we're going to turn it back over to Michelle.
Well, it looks like we have people all over the board. Hats off to those middle school people. That's the only age range I have not taught, and I did not enjoy my own children when they were in middle school. So, hats off to you. Bless your hearts. Our next slide, we are just going to take a poll. On 1 to 5, how confident do you feel about what you already know about project-based learning? I think you can just click on the number and hit submit, and then we will see the results. I think they can see the results too.
Yes, I'm going to click display results to participants. So,
so go ahead and try that. If it's not working on your end, let us know, just so we can move on if we need to.
The conference has been muted. The conference has been unmuted.
So I've unmuted everyone because this is the first time we've used polling with this program. Are you able to click a button? It's not working?
No.
No, it's not.
It's not working for me. Ranking on every number.
It wants you to rank each number.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I bet that is
Oh, we set it up.
chairperson error. Yes.
Oops.
Okay.
I got that.
So we're going to close the poll and move on, but let's do this. Why don't you just chat in your answer? So on a scale of 1 to 5, chat in your answer how confident you are at this point in your practice to utilizing PBL, project-based learning, and we'll get the results that way. Thank you.
5 being very confident.
Yes. 1 being very confident. 5 being not confident, or that's how you want to do it.
That's fine.
Okay, that's fine.
The conference has been muted.
Well, we have lots of very unconfident people, it looks like, or at least uncomfortable. And we have some that are kind of in the middle of the road. And honestly, that's kind of where I was when we started this. What I want today is for you to be more comfortable and to just kind of get ideas that you can use, and hopefully you'll get those today. Well, we're just going to move on since that did not work the way we wanted it to. In the past, when we first started teaching, we were responsible, or at least we felt we were responsible for everything that our students were going to learn. If they were going to learn anything, it was our responsibility to make that happen. But now, our responsibility is more guiding them while they take ownership of their learning, because if they own it, they will know it. And you've heard a lot with Common Core and Oklahoma Academic Standards about rigor and relevance. Well, we're not really talking about covering more things. We're talking about what they do know, what we do cover, that they will know that and deepen that understanding of that. And it's more about the pursuit of inquiry, which we want our kids to be curious. And in the past, we've just given them the answers. You know, memorize this fact, and here's the answer to this fact. But now we want them to be able to be curious themselves and come up with those other questions. There's a book called The Global Achievement Gap by Tony Wagner, and it talks about 7 survival skills. I want to tell you about my sister. My sister is an accountant for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I asked her one time, she was needing to hire some people, and what kind of people did she need to hire? And she said she needed people who could work by themselves, and she also needed people who could work in a group, because I'm sure you all have those students in your class that only want to work by themselves and don't want to collaborate with anyone. But you also have those students that don't want to ever work by themselves. Because when they go into a hospital to audit, they need to either, if it's a big hospital, they need to be able to work in a group to audit this hospital. Or if it's a small hospital, they need to be able to do that alone. And we all have that kind of thing in our classroom. So we need to develop the skills on both ends of that with our children. And in this book that Tony Wagner, he goes to 7 survival skills that our kids will need for the 21st century. Critical thinking and problem solving, collaboration, working with each other. Boy, that's hard for some of our kids. Agility and adaptability. What that really means is that they will be able to learn in different ways than we have taught in the past. Initiative. Oh, that's a biggie. Our students really are used to us basically just feeding them the information, but they're going to have to take some more initiative. How about communication? And effective communication, that's a biggie too. Analyzing and assessing the information. When we give a student a passage to read, we want them to be able to take from that passage what's important and what's not. And curiosity. I mean, it seems in the past several years that we've really stifled that curiosity of our students.
I'd like to add here that if you look at these skills, that all of these are integral to kind of the philosophy behind the Common Core standards and the goal of many of the standards. So notice especially assessing and analyzing information, critical thinking and problem solving, being able to use collaboration. So within our cadres, we've been asked many times, something along the lines, would you please talk to us about the type of curriculum design that you think is especially helpful for meeting the Common Core standards? And our cadre trainers very often recommend the project-based model as a way to integrate many of the skills necessary for kids to learn to think in this way. Because it's not just an approach to curriculum. It is also shifting the way that we ask kids to think and to be involved in their own learning. And project-based gives you, as a practitioner, a way to do that and often to meet many of the standards at the same time. It can also be very cross-curricular, which is very, very helpful. It's also very interesting to work with teachers in other content and subject areas or grade levels to design units of study that are interrelated and really get kids into the real meat of what we want them to learn.
That's exactly right. If they can hear it more than once in the day, working with another teacher in another subject or whatever, that's the best way that our kids are going to learn this. Now, if I were in your school, or with you in person, we would do a project together. And since we're not, and I can't hand you some straws, I'm going to talk to you about a straw tower project. You can do this from either early elementary, preschool, or kindergarten, or you can do it all the way into high school, and I've seen it in a physics class. So what we would do is I would hand you a few, a handful of straws, maybe 10 to 20 straws, and then give you a couple of instructions. And those instructions would be, use the straws to make the tallest tower you can, and it has to be freestanding. You can't use tools, or the materials you can use are, and we might say that they could use tape or scissors or something like that to make their straws together. So think about what that might look like in your grade level and in your classroom. And I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of what has been done before. There's one. It looks like their job was to hold a ball on the top of their structure. And it's a freestanding structure. It looks like they were able to use some tools, and maybe they tied it together with twist ties or something like that. Do you see in where you teach, in your grade level, and your ability of your students, how this could be done in your classroom? Would it be helpful if we had a rubric for your students to do that? I think that's a biggie. And so I'm going to take you really quick to a website, and Kim's going to tell you how exactly that's going to work.
Okay, great. So anytime you're utilizing PBL, please think about using a rubric for multiple purposes. So you'll use the rubric, first of all, to help inform your students about what is expected for them, either for the entire project or different stages of the project. You can use it also as a grading guide or as a feedback guide to your students. You can use it for parental information to help communicate to parents what your kids are doing. And then I think most importantly, the kids can use it to self-judge where they are. So at this point, we are going to share with you my laptop, and we are going to bring up the Rubistar for Teachers website. Please chat in if you are familiar with rubistarforteachers.org with a yes or no while I switch us over to that website.
We saw lots of yeses on the chat. Someone asked about this being implemented in an algebra class. I'm not sure. I can spell algebra, but beyond that, I'm not really confident about my skills in algebra. Okay, we're on the Rubistar. When I show you this rubric, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. This is the free part. You can sign in and you can become a member, but I'm just going to show you the free part right here. Kim typed in Straw Tower Project, and she's just going to go ahead and search for that. And scroll down a little bit. Oh, let's go back. Sorry. Just page back. Products? Yeah, let's go to products. I'm sorry, right here under science where it says building a structure, that's what we're going to do. And this is all free and you can do this yourself. You don't have to sign in. But look at the bottom here where it says creating your own rubric. In the top it says please choose under categories. So we're going to choose a category. We're going to choose materials. Let's say materials right here under the construction part of it. And do you see how that just populates that up with a 4, 3, 2, 1 right for you? It's super easy. You don't even have to think about it. If you're at upper grades, you can give this to your students and they can just do it however they want. Now, another benefit to this website is that you are able to put your own things in. If it doesn't say exactly how you want it to, you can do it yourself and you can make your own. But then you can print it out. You have it forever and ever.
For example, if you're really using, this is a great introductory project to kind of introduce to kids the idea of working together in collaboration. You can tailor it to almost any subject area. I've even known language arts teachers who utilize the straw tower to build a model of what it's like to create a piece of writing. So, for example, if you wanted to grade different groups on their ability to collaborate and how well they did, notice that in the box I typed in collaboration, and then in this box I can create the level language I want in each of the boxes for how well they collaborated. Or I could go search another rubric and copy and paste that into these boxes with Rubistar.
Right.
One thing also to know about Rubistar, it was started as part of the National Writing Project and is federally funded. And so the program has been around a long time, and I think it will continue to be around for a very long time.
Well, and while we're here, I want to just go back, and we're going to go up to the top of this page again, and we might need to page back. Let's page back. And just since Kim mentioned language arts, there's a research and writing, there's oral projects. Let's just click on one of those and see what's under there.
Well, persuasive or argumentation is very important to Common Core.
So we're just going to click on that, and we'll scroll down, and what you can see is the categories. You can choose what you want to maybe assess your students on. Evidence, now that's a biggie because Wikipedia is not the best source, so that our students are able to tell what they think and why they're writing about what they're writing, but also give some really good defense of their opinion of whatever they're trying to be persuasive about.
Notice that I clicked on support for position. So also for people who are not familiar, for example, with utilizing writing across the curriculum, I strongly suggest to you that one aspect or two aspects of your project-based learning unit should have writing and presentation skills built in some way. So if you are not a language arts teacher, but you're looking for ways to incorporate it, what a great thing to be able to go here, and it informs you as a teacher about, the types of evidence that kids should use, and it gives you ways to become really an excellent assessor of student writing projects, even if you're not a language arts teacher. So please think about that and how you can utilize writing within your project-based learning units of study.
And even in math, how did they arrive at their answer? That's a big thing. Some of them might have come to the right answer in a different way than anybody else, and that sometimes when they share that, it makes it easier for another student. Okay, now what we're gonna go back, and I want you to reflect on your own learning and projects that you did while you were a student in school. When I was in 6th grade, my teacher did a unit on mythology, and our project at the time was to create our own mythological god, or I guess that's what it was. Now, I'm not really sure what was going on in my life at the time, but I chose the Tattletale god, and his job was to tell on all the naughty things the other gods did. I still remember that. I was 11 or 12 years old, and I can still remember what happened there, and how much I remembered about that led me to, in high school, I took Latin for 2 years because it was such an impact on my life. Now, my older brother in high school, you typically have a paper that you write each year. He read one book in high school. It was Mean on Sunday, the Ray Nitschke story. Well, he was able to write the paper each year and make a good grade each year on the same book. Well, that should not be possible. There should be some different kinds of requirements of us as we get older in high school. So think on your own about things that you did, and if you want to chat in something that you did that you especially remember that was either good or bad. We gave you some examples who did not do a shoebox diorama. I mean, everybody did that. I think I did a couple on Helen Keller myself. So chat in what those are. Does anybody want to share?
So Megan writes, my very favorite project in school was at the end of 9th grade, English. My teacher told us we were going to host a dinner party and the guests were going to be the characters from all of the literature we had read throughout the year. We had to choose the characters to invite, a theme, food, and a seating chart. Man, what a depth of understanding we had to have in order to plan that party. Oh, I wish I was still a language arts teacher and I would totally be using this.
That's a great idea.
Rebecca says Beowulf bingo. Wow.
I can't imagine making Beowulf interesting, so I'm going to
girl. Beowulf, very
interesting. It's not my
interesting.
favorite.
Julie, building a DNA model. Kira, I was in a GT class and we had to develop different business proposal. I remember having to design a working playground. Very cool. Erica, hi Erica. I had my kids create a board game following a unit on biomes and habitats. Ken Bennett, I will type into her.
And some people don't have a special, remembrance of what they did as a project in school, and that's okay. I just think that as my own children went through school and they learned things, they did a living museum, and they had to learn about a person in history, and they learned it really well because they had to become that person. So it's kind of a cool thing, and I still can ask them about I don't remember who their person was, but they do, and it just kind of nails that in a little bit more. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a quiz, and I don't know if we can chat it. It would be too much to chat in, but just think yourself, and then we'll just kind of go through. And so what is project-based learning? I'm going to give you a couple of different scenarios, probably 6 or 7, and you're going to decide if it's a project, like that shoebox diorama where I made Helen Keller and I guess her house. I can't even remember. But I don't really remember much beyond that, not a real depth of knowledge. Or was it maybe a project-based learning where I had to learn it and write about my own mythological god? Or like the dinner party, what a great idea, that still makes an impact on your life. So the first one, and it's on the next slide. Teacher's work is done after the project is complete. All projects have the same outcome. Assignment is relevant to students' lives. It requires a teacher's guidance and collaboration. These are kind of easy, and sometimes I think they can be both. But a teacher's work in project-based is really done after or before the project is complete. We do our work all along the way. The teacher guides and collaborates with those students all along the way in a project-based learning. Where in a project, if you just write a paper, you would just write a paper, and then the teacher would have to grade that like a term paper. A term paper, all the projects would pretty much have the same outcome. And I think there's a couple more questions on the next page. How about the projects are turned in? A term paper is turned in. My shoebox sure was turned in. Or the assignment is open and the students get to make choices. That's more project-based, as if there's maybe a topic, but not necessarily the same product at the end of it. So now we're going to get into more of the meat of of what project-based is. And there are 3 types of project-based learning. There's problem-based, where we're solving a problem. inquiry-based, which you science teachers do a lot of that anyway, and they have to do some critical thinking. And again, think about how they're going to have to defend or show what they know. And then project-based, just developing a product or a project. Now we're going to take you to a short little video. It's a couple minutes long, and they're going to call it challenge-based video. It's about an elementary class that had a problem on their playground, and they're going to show you how they solved that problem.
And before we go there, I've had several questions about should I be taking notes or will we receive the PowerPoint? After the video, or I mean after our archived, after the webinar today, you will receive a link which will take you to the archived version of the webinar. And from that point, you can, choose to print, you can do whatever, but you can also just have access to the archived webinar, so you don't necessarily have to take notes. So please be aware of that. And now I'm going to share again, and we are going to go to a YouTube video.
This is Megan. She and her classmates are studying about animals, and they just had a big idea. They have problems with too many geese in their neighborhood. They can't play kickball at recess because the playing field is too messy. This led to a discussion, and Juan, who just moved here from California, mentioned that they have problems with coyotes around their houses bothering their pets. Kanisha shared that she was visiting her grandparents in New Jersey this summer, and she saw a lot of deer near busy streets that almost caused car accidents. They noticed that in many parts of the world, humans and animals are competing for space. This led them to wonder, how can humans and animals coexist? Their teacher posed the following challenge. How can we deal with the animal problem in our neighborhood? This challenge led to many more questions. In order to go about answering these questions, they formed groups that had kids with different roles and talents. They used many different resources. Their teacher got them started by suggesting some books and internet sites and reminded them about all the technology tools that would help them answer their questions. They read books about geese. They took pictures and video of the geese in the field. They used video conferencing to speak with wildlife officials. They did a survey of how many geese they saw on the field at different times of the day. They collected, graphed, analyzed, and shared their data. They talked to their parents and neighbors about the geese situation. Once they answered these questions, they talked about possible solutions, and then they chose one of those solutions and developed an action plan. They decided that the responsible solution was to share the field with the geese. They chose a section of the field that would be for kids, and another area where geese could stay. They had discovered that dogs scared geese, so they decided to make cardboard cutout dog silhouettes to put on the field when they were not playing in it. Before moving forward, they asked themselves, is it thoughtful? Is it possible? Can we do this by ourselves, or will we need someone else's help? They presented their plan to the principal and student council. The school community voted to approve their plan, and it was put.
Well, for some reason that cut off early. I'm not sure why it did. What they did, let me just explain to you the rest of the video so we can just kind of move on. They presented their findings to the school board and to the principal, and what they were able to do is they implemented the solution that they came up with. They put the dog silhouettes on the playground, and then they no longer had a problem with their geese. They were able to share their space with the geese. So think now about how many different subject areas they touched. They touched language arts. They had to do some research. You have to do research in a lot of subjects. They did data, which can be used in science and math, and they analyzed that data. There's just a lot of things that they were able to do. And that was just a problem that they had. That was not part of necessarily part of their curriculum, but the teacher was able to use that and guide that. To how many standards were met by that, we just don't know. There's just a lot of of things going on there that they were able to do. So, what is project-based learning? It's a set of learning experiences, and that's real important, the experience part, and tasks that guide students in inquiry, answering a central question, solving a problem, or meeting a challenge. And you can see in that last video how that happens.
Michelle, we have an interesting question from Deborah Clark, and she asked, what about students who refuse to do projects?
Well, boy, that's the age-old questions. What about those students who refuse to do anything? Well, it could be, we probably need to find a reason why. Are they afraid of presenting? Are they afraid, what is the underlying problem here? But maybe it's a kind of project that they don't want to do the kind of project we want them to do, where if, let's say, little Johnny could decide what kind of project it is himself and he had some autonomy in that, that might help. I'm not sure, because I have students like that all the time that just will not, whatever it is I want them to do, they will not do it. But maybe if we said, okay, you decide how you're going to show me that you know this skill, maybe that would help.
I'd like to add a couple things. So a lot of times when students start pulling back from a project, for example, it may be related to a preferred learning style. Like some people, their preferred way of learning, especially new and difficult information, is learning it alone. And so maybe you can work with that student to learn some of the basic information, or to do some, as Michelle said, autonomous research or autonomous background information, or learning about something that he or she could then share with the group if he or she is comfortable in doing that. Also, you need to think about Marzano's guidelines for collective interdependence. And that means that students have both personal responsibility, small group responsibility as well. Also, there's a large group responsibility built in. That should be reflected in your assessment of students. Different parts of it would have different grades, for example. There'll be both independent personal grades. There'll be small group grades where everybody in the group gets that same grade. You may even want to assign a large group grade in some way. So think about it in that way. Motivation issues with kids is almost entirely personal and dependent upon the student. And so you've really got to talk to that student in a non-threatening way and address it individually. So try those things, and I am not promising that that will be an answer, but it's some things that you can also try. So we hope that you'll have some success from that. So I'm also reading an interesting response from Megan, who says, a few years ago I had a student who was petrified of speaking in front of the class. He would even lie to her about his assignment in order to avoid it. But she and his mom worked through the year to communicate to him about, that really it wasn't an option to not participate, and that he worked with neighbors, and that helped him kind of diffuse his fear about presenting before the class. So there's a lot of different things that you can do there. I really encourage you to look at 2 resources for this, Marzano, and then also look to Ruby Payne for some information on student motivation. And also, rubrics are very interesting in regards to providing some motivation for students, because the rubrics can be used throughout the project for kids to self-assess where they're at, and sometimes that's helpful. So there's some ideas. And thank you for the questions, and thank you, everyone, for kind of chatting in some responses.
Well, and 2, I noticed that on Deborah's it was about building a model of a cell. And there are lots of different ways you could build a model of a cell. It could be 3-dimensional. It could be on the computer. You just have to find out what that student's strengths are, I think, because I would not have the first idea of how to do it in, maybe on a CAD program on a computer, but I could maybe write about that. Or I could maybe, even if I couldn't write about it, I could explain about that, and that might be a little more helpful.
Student choice is very often helpful with kids with motivation issues, because it really speaks to the concept of what is relevant to the student, and that segues us to our next slide.
Yeah, because a lot of times if they have a choice and it's relevant to their life and something they are learning about, that is where we get that engagement component. You know, the parts of a cell may not be particularly engaging, but maybe somehow, how can we relate that to what is today? What can we pull in that might make that like today? And we want to make it, if it's relevant, it's going to be an authentic learning experience and real-world connections. And the biggie right here is that academic risk-taking. We have so many students, especially students of poverty, that will not take a risk. It is just too painful for them to take an academic risk.
So to add to the concept of academic risk, let me say that it really requires at the beginning of the year for you to work consistently towards building a community of learning where getting things wrong is comfortable, where that is an accepted part of learning. And so do some time the rest of this year and next summer thinking about what does that really mean for how I design both my curriculum and my classroom, and what are my expected student behaviors? No ridicule, for example, kids being very willing to talk to each other, an atmosphere of acceptance, spending time at the beginning of the year for kids to really get to know routines and rules so they feel safe, but also getting to know each other and you, so it doesn't just happen. So before you start your first PBL assignment, and we really encourage you to choose a couple to do before the end of this year, think about, if you haven't, don't think that your classroom is there yet. Spend some time on that before you start introducing really big PBL projects, like do the straw tower. Watch your kids interact. Notice how they behave with each other. Because if they won't take a risk, they're not going to learn. Think about all the times you learned the biggies, right? What happened? You got it wrong first. And so you learn from mistakes. And project-based means that there will be trial and error very often. Kids may make choices about how to do something and then realize they have to reframe their choice, or they have to revise what they're doing, or they have to add or delete something. You may realize that and have to facilitate that. So something to think about with PBL is it is a philosophical shift and not just a unit of study you create. It is very much related to this concept about relevance and how all of these things interrelate as you start to revise your curriculum to make PBL more likely to succeed in your room.
Well, and it can be real simple. It could be, for instance, you know, having a jar with jelly beans in it, and you can model for them how it is when you fail. You guess how many jelly beans, and you on purpose fail, and model for them, maybe with a social contract about how we're going to treat others in our classroom. And that's a real simple way to do it, and plus it's jelly beans they want to eat, so that's a real easy way to do it, to model that for them. Also with the straw tower, if you noticed, if you go back on that and you look at the rubric, there's nowhere in the rubric that says that you have to succeed in that being a freestanding tower. So if the student used the correct materials and collaborated with their friend and explained their processes, whatever you decide would be your criteria for any project, they don't have to succeed. Their project could be could fall over and not stand at all, and they would still be able to earn a good grade because the process, not the product, but the process of what they did was successful.
Kara Fagan just put in a great comment. She said, in my Girl Scout troop, we celebrate what she calls, quote, the negative differences. When one child is bossy, we discuss how they are natural leaders. I love that. So, Michelle, I'm a natural leader, dadgummit.
Yeah, my husband says I am too.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of being a leader, our role as a teacher is going to change a little bit. We're going to be more of we're not going to be that sage on the stage where we just lecture and talk and, pour all of our fountains of information into these empty vessels. We're going to be the guide on the side, guiding our students to learn, creating that positive learning culture. The student's learning is the center of what we are, not necessarily what I want them, the important, wonderful things I have to say, but what the student needs to learn. And to develop that, curiosity and to be a manager of what it is they're doing in their inquiry process, and then to also to assess their learning. And it's just a shift in thinking. It's going to be a different way to think about it, but it's okay. Just take a deep breath. It'll be okay. But we have some balance that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to balance the choice, the student's choice. That's the student side. They are going to get some choice in what they do, but the structure is what we provide. The process is what and now we're going to flip it on the next. The process is what you and I, as teachers, will help them and guide them through, but the product is all the child's own. And every product is going to be, they may not all be different, but every product is going to belong to that child.
I'd like to add here, think about how this particular slide would work with rubrics, for example. So when you create the structure, what a fantastic way to communicate to your kids what the structure of your project is with a rubric. The same thing about the process. You can have a rubric for process and for product. You may even just choose to design one where structure, process, and product are all on one rubric. But again, for these big projects, think about utilizing rubrics to help you communicate with kids, to help kids communicate with each other and their parents, and for you to communicate authentic assessment of their products too.
Which is a good segue into that next slide, is about communication. And that's our communication to our students. We're going to do that through rubrics. Now, younger ages and grade levels, you're going to have to do that a little bit differently. In my class, right now I have low-level special ed students, and we do happy face, sad face. That would be my rubric because we don't understand much deeper than that. But my neighbor down the hall in the physics class, he has pretty detailed rubrics that he gives his students because their level of understanding is more. Also, we're going to do guiding questions. Even with my students, if I ask them to do something or to give me a product of some sort, I'm like, how can you show me what you know? How do you know that 5 plus 2 is 7? How do you know that? And those are going to be guiding questions, so they have to give us more back. Instead of just an answer on a page, they're going to have to give us more back so that we can see where the level of understanding is. Also, we're going to check in when there is, say, a term paper or a big project that's going to take, the straw project would take a half an hour in your classroom. A bigger project, you're going to have to check in along the way and make sure they're on the right track, because if we get to the end of a project and our students are off base, we've done something wrong. It's not necessarily what they have done wrong, but we haven't checked in often enough to make sure that they are on the right track, which means that the role of our student will also change. Our students are going to have to collaborate. They're going to be self-managers, which I know is the scariest thing ever, because right now, especially, well, I don't know, the high schoolers that I see in my school are not the best self-managers. They are typically pretty good conductors of research, but they can't, manage their time. We're going to have to model these things, and this is not going to happen overnight. But if you can think about, what if you had a teacher that had your students last year that had already taught them how to be collaborators and self-managers and to start those beginning research and to make their own decisions? Think about how different your classroom might run this year if your students are already practiced in that. So you're going to be giving a gift to the teacher next year as you start modeling these things for your students and you start requiring these things of your students. We're raising the bar for them. Instead of just having a project, when I taught third grade, we had the kids pick a president to learn about, and all I had them do was dress a paper doll basically up like the president. Looking back, I don't think they learned a thing about that. But the next unit, when we did Little House on the Prairie, and they had to tell me what some of the different vocabulary was and relate it to present day, and we made butter and those things where they had to give me back more information and we had to write about those things, that is what would stick with our students. I hope this is making sense so far, because what our main goal in this whole thing is the student ownership. If it's not relevant to their life, they're not going to own it. They're not going to remember it. It's going to be in their mind one day and then out the next.
I'd like to return to the previous slide for just a second and encourage you, if you're not familiar with the utilization of graphic organizers for multiple steps within your units of study, please look at that before you begin designing your units. Ruby Payne's research, Marzano's research, many different well-known education researchers have conducted multiple studies on how do the use of visuals aid cognition. So utilizing graphic organizers from everything from brainstorming to, for example, for kids to understand the different steps of a process, anything visual that you can give them that is graphically organized that will help them along this process puts them more in control of understanding what is going on with them. So please look to Marzano's Blackline Masters. You can find those in either one of his Classroom Instruction That Works books. There's a first and second edition. However, you can steal them like mad off the internet. Just Google graphic organizers for whatever project you're working on or whatever the concept is, and you will get tons of them to use.
Right. When you Google graphic organizers, especially elementary classes, when I was teaching in the elementary school, you could come up with, bug-shaped ones that will really capture their interest in the organizer. And then once you put the information in it, those visual kids will really key into that, and they will learn that it's just Google graphic organizers, and I think there's a million pictures of different kinds, and then you can make your own. You can, however creative you are, or you can just print them off the web. It's just easy stuff.
Great.
Now, what is the result of that student ownership? Because we've talked all about this fun stuff so far. What is the result? Well, differentiated learning. You know those students in your class that have to stand up to get their work done. You know those students in your class that need a quiet space and time to get their work done. We're able to differentiate a little bit more with using a project. Also, kids are able to use their own personal toolbox. I kind of look at it like a backpack. I've taught in schools of poverty for the last about 15 years. And I think about those kids that come to school with a backpack. And some of those kids, their backpacks are completely full. Their parents have given them so many experiences and things before they even got to me that they have a pretty full backpack of experience in life. I have other students that their backpacks are half full. I have students that their backpacks of information are empty. They have been essentially kept in a box for however long before I got them. And then I also have had those students who have holes in their backpacks. Like they knew it one day, but the next day it is gone because it maybe wasn't relevant or maybe they were hungry. I don't know why they lost the information they had the next day. But also our kids are going to get to collaborate. Those of you who are like super quiet classrooms, this might be a little uncomfortable shift for you, but it will be okay, I promise.
So student collaboration is a whole area to focus on classroom management.
Oh, yeah.
Because my sister, who does a lot of collaborative learning in her pre-engineering classrooms of VOTEC, she calls student collaboration being pecked to death by chickens, because it is just constant facilitation by you. You can't sit down. You have to be up monitoring, goading, persuading, answering questions. Use Post-it notes for this process too, right? So if there's a kid in a group who's really disengaged and not doing what they should, write on a little Post-it note, Adam, would you please become re-engaged with your group? Or if a student's doing a great job engaging others, thank you so much for helping to lead this group. Facilitation is key with student collaboration. It is not a time for, as a practitioner, to be able to go, shoo, okay, the kids are in charge. It still requires intense observation, intense facilitation, and a lot of times some pretty intense motivation to keep kids on track.
Right. Their collaboration has to be intentional, because those groups that you walk away from and they start talking about the basketball game last night.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever. So you really have to be pretty intentional and on the ball. But the whole thing that we're talking about here, projects and project-based, is really fun. It's the way I like to teach because I feel like my students learn it more, especially my low-level students. But we have to keep our curriculum in mind. Think about the end the end standards, we begin with the end in mind. The standard that you're wanting to meet, that's where we begin. How will the end result of whatever it is I want for them to do, how will that show me that they know what I intended for them to know? We have to be very intentional and communicate to our students what we want them to know. If it's in U.S. history and we're talking about the Reconstruction after the Civil War, we need to be real specific with our students. How are they going to be able to communicate that back? We can't just start, if we start at the beginning, just Civil War, it's too huge. We have to have a point that we're going to end up at. The fun thing is that it gets to be cross-curricular. Can you think if you teach language arts or in an elementary school class, it's way easier to do this. Cross-curricular is just, you can do it, you do it naturally anyway. Your content is going to have to be embedded in that. So if you're in a high school or a middle school where you're not able to be on teams, you're going to have to, your English 2 teachers are going to have to talk to your U.S. history or English 3 and U.S. history people are going to have to chat about what you're talking about. How could that English teacher support what they're doing in history? How could what you're reading about support what they're doing in history? See how those can piggyback? You can piggyback off of a lot of different subjects. Science can do that. Math is a little bit more creative how you get in there, but if you're talking about a specific era of time in history, I bet you could come up with some algebraic equations or some physics things that they had to do. I'm just talking off the hip. I don't really know what those things mean, so that's my public service announcement. But did you want to add something?
Yeah,
on math people.
No, we're not. But I would like to add that there's, I've been intrigued by a few schools in Oklahoma that are utilizing what they're terming thematic curriculum, which to them means across the curriculum at the secondary level, as PLC study. So looking at project-based learning and learning about it, and then working together within different content or departmental areas to create, 3 to 5 interdependent thematic units for kids throughout the school year, and then assessing the results of that. And I just think that's such a cool idea, and to me, really what a professional learning community is engaging in real conversation about practice and curriculum and how kids are learning. I also chatted in a while ago that this has so much to do with authentic assessment. If you want to learn more about authentic assessment, Google it. But that is the concept of having the end in mind. How do I design assessment to know what kids really know? And very, very often it is not tied to a multiple choice test or even to an essay test. It is more tied to the presentation of a product or a reflection of a challenge or some type of question that they're answering. And so think about authentic assessment in relation to project-based learning.
And we're going to shift a little bit over to the outcomes. The students' outcomes are going to be individual and they won't all be necessarily a paper. What is key, the most important is the communication by the students. When they have to present what they've learned, they know it better. Even today, as I was preparing for this PowerPoint, doing today, I had to really kind of kick it up a notch about what I knew so that I would be able to communicate effectively with you. What is important is about that communication by our students is they're going to show us what they know. Now that can come in a lot of different, that will look different for different students. Now you in your own classroom will want to give options probably to begin with. But our project outcomes, some possibilities are, we have a big long list, and I won't read them all off, I will just tell you about a couple of them. A poem, drama, song, those are all neat things. Well, they can write a paper. Easy peasy, they can, especially high school, they kind of have that. Well, what if we instead said that they could do a collage? How can a collage communicate the concept that we wanted them to know? If we're talking about a piece of literature, or if we're talking about a science concept that we want them to know, how can they show that to us through a PowerPoint. A GLOG, if you're not familiar with GLOG, just Google it. You can go on. It's an interactive poster kind of thing. It will give you just sign up. I should have had that on here, but I did a link on here, but you just Google GLOG. You can embed video into it. It's a really pretty neat thing. One of the interesting things is a meal. How can a meal communicate to me what you know about, let's say, an era of time? What might they eat during the Revolutionary War? Or a living museum, we talked about that, a biography. A skit, that's a great way for students to tell what they know about a certain thing. Now, could you do a shoebox diorama? Sure you could, but you might just up the ante on your requirements of them so that they truly do show you. One project that is not listed on here is you take old shoes and you decorate those shoes to communicate what you might know. A very cool thing when I was just Googling project-based learning one day, I was just kind of messing around, was a science teacher decided that what they were going to do is they made masks. You can buy those masks at probably Hobby Lobby. And on the inside of the mask, a student decorated that mask to describe themselves. On the outside of the mask, they had to choose an element from the periodic table, and they had to decorate that mask so that I would know what their mask element was. It's kind of a cool thing, you know, studying the periodic table to me is a lot of memorization, but if I had to do something where I really knew what that element was, plus I would remember whoever's sitting next to me when they presented and told me about their mask, I would also remember that. We're going to go on to a video that it's a little bit long, but it's important because it shows you from start to finish how this project-based learning concept is in this one school. It pairs a language arts teacher and a history teacher, and it's relevant to these students' lives. So I want you to, at one point the teacher says, so we'll go ahead and go to that video.
Okay, I'm going to share again, so we are going to move to the video.
At one point the teacher says, you know, how the students present is their own, is their choice, but almost always it's multimedia. So it's a pretty cool thing. So it's a little bit long, but I think you'll enjoy it. It's very interactive.
All right, let's watch the video.
I was a bad skipped school quite a bit. And I really didn't find education exciting until I got to college. Because then I got to control how I was going to learn. My name is Stephen Zipkis. I'm the founding principal of Maynard New Technology High School in Maynard Independent School District, Maynard, Texas. Maynard New Tech is a 100% project-based instruction school. Students at this school not only get the knowledge, but they learn the application, so the knowledge then becomes relevant when they have to apply it to a real-world situation.
I'm super excited about this project about the Hunger Games. My co-teacher, Michael Chambers, he is the expert in history. I sat down with Michael and said, you know what, I think this is how we can fit it in. Let's look at your state standards and let's look at my standards and see what is coming up next.
So what's your standards you're going to be covered in this?
We're going to do 5A, which is analyzing scenes, 5B, analyzing different characters' moral dilemmas, and this is huge.
We have no choice on what we teach. Really. The state tells us what we have to teach.
What are yours?
again that we're hitting so I can go ahead and write this out?
WH 12, a history of the students understanding the cause and impact of World War II, describe the emergence and characteristics of totalitarianism.
We hook the kids into the project with the entry event, and then we do what's called the no's and the need to knows, and that's where the students will give us a list of things. What do you know about this content? So they go through their prior knowledge, and then they talk about what do they need to know. So we're talking about leaving the students breadcrumbs in these entry events, and those breadcrumbs would be like clues, this idea of, wait a minute, I've heard this word before, I don't know exactly what that means, so that's a need to know, and I'll ask that at another time.
Probably need to include that picture that I had on research because we use that in the questions for Columbia.
Okay, so we're done here. The process of a project is constantly changing. We have to look at what the students are doing, how they're learning. Do we need to go back and do some more scaffolding? Really, if I have a student who is 3/4 of the way or almost done with an entire project and has not been doing very well, I really step back and wonder, where was I this whole time? Why wasn't I paying more attention to where the student's progress was?
Our students are averaging 60 projects a year. So they're averaging 60 to 65 public speeches a year. By the time they graduate, over 200 public speeches. They know how to talk.
My favorite project is called Create Your Own Project.
My favorite project this year was in chemistry, and what it was about, we were using chemistry and reactions to create a soda.
It's a video production class, and we're making a kid show. We're calling it the Dojo Show.
We're learning about spatial diffusion, Black Death, the Columbian Exchange.
Reactions like double replacement, combustion, things like that.
I like it because it gives me a whole lot of room to be creative.
You'll notice that we're covering a lot of the state standards that deal with working in groups and how you are giving feedback to each other on content. At the end of the class period, you need to have a complete and finalized presentation. So critical friends will be over on that side. Everyone else continue working on your presentations and we'll get started. So this half of the class has been working on a protocol that's called Critical Friends, where they're getting feedback on their presentations. We're going to do a skit on our moral dilemma.
Here's our choices. Do we take him back to the Germans so they can kill him? Do we attempt to take him to a medical center so they can heal him and save his life?
What should I do? Should I let my country suffer from the lack of resources? I like the fact that they're doing a skit instead of PowerPoint or something, because they actually make it interesting and they interact with the audience and everything.
The I likes are just obvious. What do they like about those presentations? The I wonders are maybe some clarifying questions that they might have about those presentations.
I wonder why he chose that specific music to love the presentation. That's what I wonder.
And the next steps are that's where the critique comes in, some feedback.
Put some more emotion into your speaking, really sell why you would choose a reason.
They're going to present their papers, but how they present, how they present is their choice, but they always do something multimedia. Of course, I have presentations this morning. What you should have, each group should have one clip.
As everybody knows, we read the book, The Hunger Games.
So what is a moral dilemma? It's a situation where all your choices are morally challenging. Ours was to risk your life to save another. There's 3 Jewish prisoners, and they escaped from a German concentration camp. Me and Jorge, Abe, and Jeremiah escaped fine. But our friend William is wounded, and he will die if he doesn't get help. I can't choose my own selfish desires to keep a friend than doing what is right and just and letting him go through all that pain. Thank you.
I'm assessing them on various pieces of the oral communication, like how they organize their ideas and how they deliver those ideas, what kind of tone they use during the presentation.
I'm more of an independent student of me grabbing knowledge than someone telling me.
I believe it has prepared me to take the state test because it's a new way of learning and it sticks to you in a way that's different from an oral teaching class.
When you put them in this setting, then suddenly it just makes sense to them. They see the potential that they never saw in themselves, and I get excited about my content again because it challenges me. And when I get excited about my content, they get excited. And when they get excited, it just feeds me more. And it just, to me, it makes it all worthwhile.
Okay, I hope that kind of helped you kind of see one from beginning to end. What I liked about it is it showed us how they started with their standards. You saw the two teachers sitting at the table. They were talking about their standards. Where are we going to go from here? What do you want to touch? One thing that I always notice is that on presentation day, did you notice their dress? That's part of the rubric, I'm assuming, because they are all dressed to present. They're not dressed to be at school. And just so you know the demographic of this school, this school is a suburb of, I think it's Austin. It's kind of the country suburb of Austin. So there are Oklahoma places like this. Now, when I hear them talk about how this is a completely 100% project-based school, that scares me a little bit. but they have experience with this and they're going on with it. But did you see how engaged the students were? Even when they're doing 15 different things in the classroom, they're engaged with it. What helps that, we're going to move, we're on the rubrics. What will help us is that rubric and the evaluation. We've already talked about Ruby Star. If we have time at the end, we'll go back to that, because we played with that a little bit earlier. So if we have time, we'll go back to Ruby Star. But I want to talk just real quick just on those rubrics before we go on to reflection. You do not have to have a brand new rubric for everything you do. You can have a general presentation rubric, let's say. How are they engaging with their classroom? How are they, or with their audience, their tone of voice, their dress, different things like that. That would be a general presentation one. Now you would want to be specific for your standards. Did they meet XYZ standard that you wanted to? Or you could even, honestly, you could make a general standard and fill in the blank. Johnny met so-and-so standard by, with 3 points of evidence, with 2 points, or whatever your decision might be.
One of the things I really liked about the video is that they had 3 different evaluators, but each of them were evaluating specific components of the presentation. And I think that's a really great idea if you can get that organized, because that allows people to really use their strengths in evaluation. So I really like that, and that's something I had never, something I'd never really thought about.
It says Kira has a friend that went to New Tech High School, and it's a Dallas suburb, okay. And they said that's what originally got her interested in PBL. I just can't imagine. Can you imagine teaching in a place where like that? And another thing I noticed was they used every resource in their room. They used the glass window on the door to take notes on. I mean, they just were able to, everything they had, and it wasn't expensive. Any child of any income era can make a PowerPoint or make a presentation like that. It's
very interactive, very, very doable. So I really
somebody said it didn't seem like it was long. It held their interest. Good. That's my favorite project-based video. So anyway, I'm glad you all enjoyed it. That's a good thing. Now we're done with our project. We need to reflect on what worked and what didn't. And that could be logistically, was your classroom space organized in such a way that worked or that it didn't? Did your students learn the standards you wanted them to learn, or do you have to go back and do that again? What can you add or take away from this to make it better next time? We kind of naturally do that, I think, as teachers. We're pretty good at that sometimes. However, you know, sometimes we're so busy and we have to, you know, testing is in April and we have to get there. Well, it's a little bit difficult to take that time to reflect. Well, think in terms of something you've already done, and could that be applied to project-based if you upped your expectations and your the communication that you have with your students? Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'd like to add, I'm going to give a shout out to Laura Searcy. If Laura's watching today, I don't know if she's able to. She presented our first webinar, and Laura does some project-based, and what she does is she uses for her own use the binder method. So each of her projects has a binder, and she has created a rubric where she uses the rubric to assess each phase of her project-based lessons or her units of study. She takes notes in those binders, keeps Post-it notes as she progresses, and has ideas about revision, what worked, what didn't, some unexpected outcomes. So part of this that I feel is pretty crucial is how do you start organizing your PBL units? And I really encourage you to think about using a binder, big files. Some teachers use like Tupperware boxes.
When I was in preschool, when I taught in preschool, I used pizza boxes, and everything I did for that unit or project went in a pizza box because it wouldn't fit in my file cabinet.
What a great idea. We've had a couple of questions like Kelly is asking, I'd love an example of a first grade project. So Rivistar is really cool because you can also use it for exactly that. Go into that search window and type in first grade project on science and see what you get. See what you can find that way. Edutopia.org is awesome. The Hunt Institute, which is Beck Institute, which is BIE.org, you can find great examples there. AchieveTheCore.org now has the Basal Alignment Project and also has a section where teachers are uploading and downloading lessons and curriculum. So AchieveTheCore.org. Also, if you, NEA has a new project which is free, which you can, if you go to the NEA website, you can find it. It sprang out of a project called BetterLesson.org, but it is the GPS network, and there's an area there where teachers can upload and download different lesson plans and unit ideas.
In a little bit, we're going to watch another video, and I'm going to show you some pictures of some different project things. But in your lower level classes like your preschool, your kindergarten, special ed classes, those kinds of things, where you have your standards are a little bit more vague because of the very beginning steps of getting to those higher level thinking. You can do those, just dial them back. In high school, you might study about specific animals, and you might assign, let's say in a biology class or something that you would, or zoology, that you would, each student would have a different animal and they would have to present on that. What if we did in preschool or kindergarten, we decided we were going to have a pet shop? Well, in our pet shop, we would have, let's decide as a class, it would be a full class probably project. What kinds of things would we, what kind of animals do we want to have? Well, if we want a hamster, we need to know what kinds of things that animal eats. So that's where our research and things like that, that's a very basic way you could do that in a low-level class. Just think of how you could come, strip away all the harder things that you could get down to your little ones to get them to learn that. Okay, now we're talking about that student reflection. What I think is important is for kids to be able to tell us back. You might have, at my school, they call it an exit ticket. What did they learn? Did they take ownership of it? And have kids, this is not for a grade. Tell me your experience with this project. Is this something you enjoyed or not? Maybe give them a rating scale, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, something like that. Did you enjoy this? What did you enjoy about it? Did you learn the standard that I wanted you to learn? And those things, so that the student can communicate back to you not only the standard that we hope that they learned, but if this was something that engaged them, and how will we know?
So for middle school and high school students, a couple of ways to use student reflection is also a couple of different techniques. You can use, for example, Socratic seminar to discuss and debate using evidence from resources. For example, if you're using challenge-based, which of the particular solutions that were designed do students feel like would be most effective and why? That can be a reflection. You can do reflective writing, where you ask students to do this kind of statement. In the beginning of this project, I believed blank. In the middle of the project, my thinking started changing by blank. Now at the end,
confirmed by.
Right, very good, was confirmed by. And then at the end, however, I now believe blank, and then they write that out, and then really do a reflection about what sources of information really challenge their thinking and change their thinking and why. So there's evidence from text, using a position and supporting it with details, and also there's a technique called post-hoc analysis. So it's POST-HOC analysis. Google it. It's especially effective for grades 9 through 12 and very, very good for reflection at the end of a PBL unit, and also a really cool way to assess what kids knew other than through a test.
Right, and with your younger kids, you can do those same kind of things. Instead of maybe writing it out, you might say, share with your elbow partner what you first thought. You know, you might do a KWL chart when you first begin. Let's, just take that pet shop thing into, what we know about pet shops, what we wanted to know, and what we learned. You could do it that way, because with our younger kids, they won't have the skill necessarily, but they can talk. Boy, can they talk, and they will be able to tell their friend. And sometimes it's less threatening to tell a friend what you think than it is to tell the class or the teacher. It's just a little bit laid back. Now we have a few pictures I want to show you about some. I just Googled project-based learning, and here are some things, some pictures we came up with. Most of these you're going to see these students working in groups. I don't know necessarily what they're doing, but especially that one on the bottom right, the little girl, it looks as if she's reading off of something, and here's her evidence that she's pointing to that the boy is holding for. Can you, lower level, here it looks like a preschool class. Oh, it looks like possibly a zoo. What a great idea for even little ones to get interested in learning different things about different animals.
Looks like they're taking care of a zebra there, doesn't
someone's
it?
getting a shot
Yeah,
or something.
maybe their temperature's getting read. That's great.
Now we have some upper level things. The top one, it looks like it's a map of something. It's hard to tell on a small screen, but I love the bottom one. It's one of those, it has a word, that you do one thing and then everything else happens. That looks like high school physics, possibly. I mean, you can see how you can just, the possibilities are endless.
Here, kids look like they're testing a hypothesis about maybe how they've built something that the child's blowing on to test force or movement, or I wish we knew more about that.
If you look at the kids in the background, every child, look at the interest in the intensity. I mean, they're all engaged in whatever it is they're doing and watching. And here it looks like we might blow something up. I'm a little afraid of that. But this is what they do. One of the teachers in my school, she was the anatomy teacher, did a great project with her students. They made a digestive system. And it was this long tubey thing, and they had a stomach, and they had to have a product at the end of that digestive system, if you catch my meaning, that had to go from a chewy mouth all the way through the digestive system, and these students had to build that. What a great idea and hands-on idea for even big kids that could memorize what happens where, but that they had to, and the things that they had to use to digest the whatever it is their stomach or mouth had eaten. It's just a great idea.
So I'd like to add also, do a little bit of thinking about how is PBL related to student engagement? And Michelle has mentioned this several times. But one thing I draw your attention to is look how kinesthetic and tactile these activities are. Kids are up and moving. They're not sedentary. Physical movement engages cognition and engages their thinking. So there's lots of reasons that project-based learning is especially effective for kids. You know, there's a reason that a lot of kids at the secondary level will tell you I'm a lot more engaged at VOTEC than I am when I'm at school. And it's because the whole concept very often of VOTEC systems, and I have a sister that teaches pre-engineering there, is based upon project-based learning and kids figuring out solutions along the way of their learning. So there is a really great research base which supports the idea of project-based learning aiding teachers in increasing student engagement.
We have one last video, and then we'll answer some questions that you have. This video is going to talk a lot about a Prezi. Some of you will be, it's P-R-E-Z-I. Some of you will be familiar with this. And what these students, it's a restaurant project. They had to come up, it's middle school, they had to come up with a restaurant. They had to do everything from a menu to a budget to nutrition. Lots of things are hit in this. So when you watch this, and their presentations are in a Prezi format, you can Google Prezi and find out how to do that. It's a little more than we have time to get into today. But here is the restaurant project.
follow anything else. I don't have to use like the certain things that they have up there. I can make my own thing.
We have fun and like still be doing work. Like this might be something I might want to consider in college. I might be a video game designer. You never know.
What I love about that video is they talk about the research they have to do. They had to do for their restaurant project. They talked about researching for reference to make sure that theirs is good. They talked about their juicy adjectives a few times. But you can tell that someone was coaching them to come up with more ways to say the same thing. The girl in the pink shirt is my very favorite. Don't we all want to have a kid like that in our class? That she says, you know, a lot of times you don't have a voice, but after I did my research, it gave her a voice. And you can see how far-reaching some of this can go, where the girl said, you know, I might want to do this in college. Or this might be a job I might want to have. We just never know how far-reaching what we do with our students will be, whether it's good or bad. Let's hope that it's going to be on the good side.
Yeah, I really like that about her saying that that this type of project gave her a voice because, you know, I think it's so directly related to student engagement. You know, kids have to be able to have a voice and not just sit and get in school. And this is especially a concern at the middle school and the high school level. So giving kids a way to have a voice, man, what a way to increase relevance, engagement. I'm just so sold on this idea. Any last words, Michelle?
Okay, Janine says the sound didn't come across clearly. Well, if you want to just, after we're finished here, just Google or just go to YouTube, and it's called The Restaurant Project, and you will find it. I'll have Kim type in a couple of the websites that we don't already have up for you that we've mentioned. We talked about Edutopia, edutopia.org. There's a big section on there that you can just go to project-based learning. And the cool thing about on Edutopia is that, or can we go there real quick?
Yes.
Is it hard?
No.
Okay. We're going to, your screen is going to go blank while we'll just go to Edutopia. And I'm going to show you real quick, since we have a little bit of time, how you can find things that are already done. The lesson plans are already done. If you scroll down a little bit, you will see project-based learning. We'll click on that. And then you can see the different parts of it. There's a big PBL list. We're going to click on that first, and it has all kinds of things like already made rubrics for you and different things, but you can go on the right-hand side, you can go by grade level. You can go filter by different types. You can also go to the video one. I'm very visual. I like to see things in action before I do it to see how it worked for someone else. And some of those, like that Maynard Tech is on there several times. They have more than one video on there. You can just see lots of different things and make it relevant to you. also on Edutopia, you'll be able to find there's some assessment pieces already, some rubrics that are already done on there. So just play around with that, because you do not need to come up with this from scratch. Now, go ahead now and start. We can't see them at this moment when we're on Edutopia, but go ahead and if you have questions, start chatting them in.
And I'm going to go back to our webinar format. So if you have a question, please chat it in. And in the meantime, I want to say, first of all, thank you for being an OEA member. Your membership makes these types of presentations possible. We have received a grant from the NEA to utilize webinar technology, and very soon we're in the process of videotaping practitioners in Oklahoma talking about best practices, and we're going to have those on our website. Membership matters. It makes it possible. We want to be a resource to you for curriculum, for improving your practice, for helping you in your practice. So we just appreciate you so much. So I don't really see any questions coming. So
one other website I wanted to mention that we looked at some things off of. It's BIE.org. It's the Buck Institute for Education, and they also have a big project-based learning section on there that has, you can filter it by videos, you can filter it by grade level, you can filter it by subject level. There's just a lot of good stuff in there.
All right, well, I would like to wrap up today. I want to say a huge, huge thank you to Michelle, a wonderful PBL resource, and a dear, dear friend to me, and so she's done such a great job. So give a silent clap to Michelle for her work today. Also, Tara, you're so welcome. SOEA members, we're so glad to have you here. So real quick, before you sign off, don't leave yet, in order to get a certificate of attendance today, you're going to receive a link to do an evaluation. And when you do the evaluation, there will be a field to type in your name and address to receive a certificate. We send those out via snail mail in our typical color cardstock format so that it's very authentic. So you can use that for professional development points or whatever you need it for. I encourage you to utilize it for teacher evaluation, for your as an artifact for your teacher evaluation portfolio. So, and yes, you may be able to get credit for continuing ed by utilizing that certificate. You will receive the link for the archived webinar as well. And then also, if you were not present for our first one, which is Writing Across the Curriculum, as an OEA member, you can go to the members-only portion of our website and you can watch that one. But you'll have to have your membership card to type that in. So again, you will not get an evaluation, you will not get a certificate of attendance unless you complete the evaluation process. So please do that. For those of you who are watching the archive version after today, please email Kim Luttrell in order to get that evaluation, because then I can go online and verify that you actually viewed the video. My email address is klittrell@okea.org. And everyone who viewed, if you have any questions, you can email me as well. And man, have the rest of this beautiful Saturday. It's finally warm. Please get out there and enjoy it and soak up some vitamin D. And we look forward to working with you again. So thank you so much, and we're going to sign off in just a moment. We'll stay on a few more minutes if you have any questions, but we really appreciate your time and energy today, and take care.